This is Pastor Jonathan Evans. I want to talk for a few moments about hurt and hatred and its power to destroy us if we allow it. A former slave, his name was Booker T. Washington, said, "I resolved that I would permit no man, no matter what his color might be, to narrow and degrade my soul by making me hate him." On the one hand, this is a comment on racism, and on the other hand, I think it's a commentary on the power of hatred to corrupt and to destroy anyone who can't forgive those who have hurt him or her. Jesus on the cross spoke those famous words, "Father, forgive them, they do not know what they have done." Why didn't Jesus pray something like, "Father, I forgive them for what they've done to me"? He doesn't. Instead, he says, "Father, you forgive them for what they've done." Jesus so identifies with the Father, he so identifies himself with God that he commends his mind, his heart, his body, his soul, his spirit, all that he is. He commends that to God, including all that's been done to him and all those who have done all of those things to him. He commends it all to God, understanding that ultimately what they've done to me is something they've done against you, and so I'm asking you, God, to forgive them. In the Old Testament, there's a story of David. He sees a woman, her name is Bathsheba, and he commits adultery with her. He commits a sin against her, and then to cover that up, he commits a sin against her husband Uriah by having him murdered. Now God in his mercy and in his kindness uncovers this sin before David. And David in Psalm 51:4, he sings, he prays, he cries out to God, "Against you, you only, God, have I sinned." Yes, he sinned against Bathsheba. Yes, he sinned against Uriah. But again, David understood that ultimately all sin against people is sin against God. And so he brings it and he sums it all up, says, "God, against you, you only have I sinned." And so in that same way, we want to understand what we have done against others, right? We want to have that attitude that was in Jesus, have that attitude that was in David, that God, against you and you only have I sinned. Yes, I've sinned against them. Yes, I will have to go and make things right and ask for forgiveness. But at the end of the day, they are created in your image. At the end of the day, I am called to obey you, and I have sinned against you, and I have sinned against them. You forgive me for what I have done. But it's a little bit more difficult when somebody sins against us. Are we as quick to say, like Jesus did on the cross, "Father, forgive them for what they've done"? Or do we, rather than commending ourselves to God, try and draw away from God, and in our hurt we begin to take, if you will, out of God's hands what belongs to him, and we want to take it to ourselves, and we want to begin to linger over it, we want to cling to it, and hurt and hatred begin to develop and to grow within us, and we stop praying things like, "Father, you forgive them," and instead, "I'm going to take care of this. I'm going to take care of them." And that's the dangerous attitude. That's the beginnings, if you will, of hurt and hatred beginning to work within us. And so we have to remember Booker T. Washington's words that hatred narrows and degrades the soul. It diminishes us, even sometimes to the point of, we might say, a vanishing point. Listen, we are never more unlike God than when we hate another person. We are never more unlike God than when we hate another person. So we might say that we are very much like God when we forgive another person. Paul in Ephesians 2 says that God in Christ loved us and he died for us. He gave himself up for us, and he forgave us when? While we were yet sinners, haters, enemies of God. See, to forgive somebody is to, in love, give yourself up for them. To forgive someone is to say to them what God has said to you, that in Christ I loved you and I gave myself up for you. So when we forgive, we're saying in Christ God has also loved you and given himself up for you. So Paul goes on and he says in Ephesians 2 that not only has Christ given himself up for us, but in Christ we have been brought near to God. To be brought near to God means that there were divisions of hostility and enmity that separated us between God. And God in Christ came and he broke those divisions, those walls down by the power of his great love and his forgiveness. But there's even more. God in Christ has come to kill the hostility within us. See, forgiveness doesn't just come to break down what is between us. it also comes to deal with what is within us. Again, the hatred that results from the hurt. Hatred can be that division between us, but it can also be that something within us that begins to degrade and to diminish and to ultimately destroy our soul. So I want you to know today that in Jesus, who loved you, gave himself up for you, and in God, that is the forgiveness that is extended to you, that in him you have unlimited resources for your hurt. You have unlimited resources for those who have hurt you. You have resources in God through Christ to love and to forgive. So rather than seeing hatred narrow and degrade and diminish your soul, I want to see your soul grow. How? In forgiveness. Grow in forgiveness, and let forgiveness grow in you. Grow it in the love of God for you in and through Jesus Christ. In him there's forgiveness for you, and through him there is forgiveness for others.